2 words. That is all. John chapter 11, verse 35 says, Jesus wept. It is the shortest verse in the entire Bible. Most people read it quickly, as a footnote between Lazarus dying and Lazarus rising. A brief moment of sadness before the miracle. But if you slow down and ask why did he weep when he already knew what he was about to do? What you find in that question is one of the most tender and devastating portraits of God in all of Scripture. Today we sit with those 2 words, and we do not move past them quickly. To understand why Jesus wept, we need to understand what he was walking into. Lazarus, a man Jesus loved deeply, had died 4 days earlier. His sisters Mary and Martha had sent word to Jesus when Lazarus first fell ill. Jesus deliberately waited. He did not rush. John chapter 11 verse 4 records that he said, "This sickness will not end in death. It is for the glory of God." He already knew what he was going to do. He knew Lazarus would rise. He told his disciples plainly in John chapter 11 verse 11, "Lazarus has fallen asleep, but I am going to wake him up." He arrived at Bethany knowing the end of the story. Here is a detail that changes everything. In John chapter 11, verse 33, 2 Greek words describe what happened inside Jesus when he saw the crowd weeping. The first is embrimaomai, to snort with anger, like a horse about to charge. He was not simply moved to quiet sympathy. He was furious. He was looking at death, at what sin had done to the people he made and loved, and something in him rose up against it. The tears that followed were not only grief. They were the tears of someone angry at what should never have existed in the first place. Death was not supposed to be here. But the second Greek word is even more remarkable. The word is eteraxon huton, which literally means he troubled himself. Not he was troubled. He troubled himself. Active, deliberate, a choice. He could have stayed composed. He had the power to. Instead, he chose to let the grief in. He did not push the feeling away. He allowed himself to be fully consumed by it. The ancient theologian Augustine put it this way, "You are troubled against your will." Christ was troubled because he willed it. He entered the pain on purpose, because the people he loved were in it, and he refused to stand outside of it. This is the question that stops scholars cold. Why did Jesus weep if he already knew he was about to raise Lazarus? He had already told Martha, "I am the resurrection and the life." He had already told his disciples Lazarus would wake up. He was minutes away from calling a dead man out of a tomb. So why cry? Multiple scholars point to the same answer. Knowing the ending does not make you immune to the pain of the moment. Jesus was not watching from a distance. He was standing in it. He saw Mary at his feet. He saw her face. He felt the weight of what death does to the people left behind. And the fact that he was about to fix it did not stop him from first entering into it. He could have arrived composed and confident. Instead, he arrived and wept. Because the people he loved were hurting, and their pain was enough, by itself, to move him to tears. There is one more layer that most people never know. John chapter 11, verses 45 to 53, records what happened immediately after Jesus raised Lazarus. The religious leaders gathered. They said, "If we let him continue, everyone will believe in him." And from that day forward, they plotted to kill Jesus. Raising Lazarus was the act that finally sealed his death. Jesus knew this. He knew that walking to that tomb, calling Lazarus out, would sign his own death warrant. His tears at the grave were also the tears of someone who understood exactly what this act of love was going to cost him. He wept for Mary. He wept in fury at death. And he wept knowing that giving Lazarus his life back would begin the countdown to surrendering his own. He went to the tomb anyway. He called Lazarus out anyway. Love did not calculate the cost and turn back. It wept and went forward. John chapter 11, verse 36, records the response of the crowd standing there. They watched Jesus weep and said simply, "See how he loved him." 4 words. They did not say, "See how powerful he is." They did not say, "See how confident he appears." They said, "See how he loved him." The tears were the proof, not the miracle, not the theology, not the title of resurrection and life. The tears. In a world that often measures love by action and accomplishment, the crowd at Lazarus's tomb identified love by something quieter. A God who could raise the dead, choosing first to weep with the people who were mourning. That is the kind of love the crowd recognized, and it is the same love that is available to us. Now, here is what we are left with. Jesus already knew the ending. He knew Lazarus would walk out of that tomb. He knew the miracle was minutes away, and he still stopped. He still looked at the people he loved. He still let their grief reach him. He still wept. What that tells us is something simple and enormous at the same time. God is not watching our pain from a safe distance, waiting for the right moment to fix it. He enters it. He stands in it. He lets it move him. He weeps in it. Before he acts, he feels. And if you have ever been in a moment so dark that you wondered whether God even notices, this story is the answer. He notices. He is not detached. He is not unmoved. He is not hurrying past your grief toward the solution. He sees you. He is deeply moved. He is greatly troubled on your behalf. And just as he stood at the entrance of a tomb and called out a name, he knows yours too. So wherever you are right now, whatever tomb you are standing in front of, the question Jesus wept leaves us with is this: can we let God into our grief before we rush to the miracle? Can we let him stand with us in it before we demand he fix it? Because that is exactly where he already is. Not at a distance, not in a hurry. Here, with us, in the dark, before the stone is rolled away. The word is deeper than what we were taught, and the God it reveals weeps before he works, because love always enters before it acts.